It's been 53 years since the Supreme Court ruled that the Virginia law violated the 14th Amendment. The Supreme Court granted everyone the ability to marry anyone from any other race. The Loving v. Virginia case made headlines and made a breakthrough in history, especially when it came to the civil rights movement at the time. Mildred Jeter was born in 1939 in Virginia. She was of African and Native American descent. Richard Loving was born in 1933 in Virginia. He was of Caucasian descent. The couple were childhood sweethearts, and as they grew up, they later married. The couple couldn't marry in Virginia because of the Racial Integrity Act of 1924. So, the couple went to Washington, D.C. and married on June 2, 1958. One night, while the couple was sleeping, at around 2 a.m., two sheriffs made their way into the Lovings' home. They stood next to the bed, flashing lights at them. They questioned the couple and then went on to arrest them. The court in Virginia gave the Lovings the decision to either go to prison or be exiled from Virginia for 25 years. The Lovings chose to pack their belongings and leave, with the exception that they are allowed to come and visit Virginia. The couple soon returned to Virginia, secretly knowing that they were risking the fact of getting caught. The Lovings hired lawyers to fight against Virginia's marriage laws and to appeal their case. During this time, it was the civil rights movement. Also happening at this time was the assassination of John F. Kennedy, the Cold War, and the Vietnam War, and much more. The Lovings were inspired by civil rights movements that was happening all over America. Many activists like Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, Rosa Parks, and many others were a part of the movement to fight for equal rights. During this time, there were a lot of major events happening during the mid-1900s. In 1964, Mildred wrote a letter to Robert F. Kennedy for help. He then told her to contact ACLU lawyers, where they got two lawyers to volunteer, who were Bernard S. Cohen and Philip J. Hirschkopf. The Lovings needed to get the case reversed by the original judge. After waiting a year, they finally get a response from Judge Bazell. His response was, Almighty God created the races white, black, yellow, Malay, and red, and he placed them on separate continents. And but for the interference with his arrangement, there would be no cause for such marriages. The fact that he separated the races showed that he did not intend for the races to mix. In a personal interview with Mr. Hirschkopf, he talks about not really knowing the Lovings in a personal level, but he did describe them as how they were as people. And I quote, From what I learned of them, the wife was immediately likable, very soft-spoken, and giving a level of comforting. Both of them were advertised in the spotlight, but they wanted to be left alone to raise their kids. The husband looked like a redneck. He came from a segregated area, but in the area where they grew up, there were a lot of intermingling, not a lot of marriage, however. He was gruff and quiet, and the wife always answered the questions. End quote. The Loving v. Virginia case eventually made its way up to the United States Supreme Court, where there was oral arguments that was recorded.
And that is the right of Richard and Mildred Loving to wake up in the morning or to go to sleep at night, knowing that the sheriff will not be knocking on their door or shining a light in their face in the privacy of their bedroom.
On June 12, 1967, the United States Supreme Court made the final decision that Virginia's marriage laws violated the 14th Amendment. The Lovings were happy that they could go home and live a happy marriage while raising their 3 children. Eight years after the ruling of Loving v. Virginia case, in June 29, 1975, the Lovings got into an automobile accident. where Mildred lost her sight in her right eye and Richard lost his life. Mildred Loving didn't pass away until May 2, 2008 from insomnia. In 2016, a film called The Loving that was directed by Jeff Nicholas came out imitating the love story of Mildred and Richard Loving. Not only did it imitate the love story of the Lovings, but it also gave a more visual insight of the court case.
I'm gonna build you a house. Right here. Our house. I'm gonna take Mildred up to D.C. to get married.
You sure about that?
By the power vested in me by the District of Columbia, I now pronounce you husband and wife.
In here? Richard! What you doing in bed with that woman?
I'm his wife.
That's no good here.
Richard Perry Loving being a white person and Mildred Jeter being a colored person did unlawfully cohabitate as man and wife.
Richard?
I believe this is a battle that could go all the way to the Supreme Court.
Hey, we ain't hurt anybody.
The state of Virginia will argue that it is unfair to bring children of mixed race into the world.
Tell that woman to come over here.
I'm gonna raise my family here. I don't care what they do to us.
I can take care of you.
I know that.
I can take care of you.
I know we have some enemies, but we have some friends too.
You realize this case could alter the Constitution of the United States.
You think you'll lose?
We may lose the small battles, but win the big war.
Is there anything you'd like me to say to the Supreme Court Justices of the United States?
Yeah. Tell the judge I love my wife.